Hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I'm your host, as always, Nathan, and today I'm coming at you with the second to last video in my Big Ten team by team breakdown and retrospective season in review series. Today we're going to be talking about the Penn State Nittany Lions. But before we get into the video itself, it's at this point I am going to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help out the channel if you did. And now with the intro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to get started by starting with Penn State's season in review. Okay, so as far as this season for Penn State can go, unequivocally a success. You don't win 13 games in a year and have it not be a success. The main question is this an A minus or an A? Okay, and that's the pessimistic and optimistic variance, so to speak. Because let's be real, you had a very easy schedule. If we're just being honest with you, you played Ohio State, Illinois, and basically nobody else the entire year. That's just a reality of the situation. Now, I will say that is kind of a theme with a lot of teams that end up being at the top of their conferences. Because guess what? If you're a good team and you have an easy schedule, you win a lot of games. And that's not a slight or anything against this team, but it is a fact of reality. There were several teams that had more difficult schedules, but it doesn't really matter all that much, all things considered. The more pessimistic take on this season would be you got kind of lucky to get to the Big Ten championship game, where, yeah, it was a good game, but Oregon had that game in the bag pretty much the whole time, in my opinion, at least. Then you got lucky with your two draws in the playoffs, where you had probably the two worst teams in the playoffs in SMU and Boise State. And, yeah, that's pretty rough. As far as trying to be optimistic about it, okay? But the optimistic case is they were very close to beating Oregon, very close to beating Notre Dame. They won 13 games, won 2 playoff games, and James Franklin finally cemented himself as a top 10 coach in all of college football. So that's the more optimistic take that you could have on this season. And I honestly think there's probably more middle ground here than a lot of people would want to admit. I do think the schedule, as far as the ease of it, is being overblown from people that want to dismiss Penn State out of hand. They're just like, oh, they were never that good, blah, 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 blah. James Franklin overrated, yada, yada, yada. All that kind of nonsense. But I do think, objectively speaking, you playing the two worst teams in the playoff, in SMU and Boise State, and beating them, and then losing a close game to a Notre Dame team that had more holes in it than Swiss cheese, I don't think is that big of an accomplishment. Okay? I really don't think this team was better than it was in 2023. In fact, I think it was significantly worse than it was in 2023. Especially defensively. Offensively, you did get better, but the improvements you made on offense do not outweigh what you lost on defense, because Manny Diaz is maybe the best defensive play caller in college football, and that includes Bill Belichick at North Carolina. I think Manny Diaz is in that conversation. Genuinely, he's a fantastic coach. But you did go out and try to remedy that this year by hiring away Ohio State's defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, which is a big, big, big deal, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit more in the looking forward part of this video. The last thing I want to talk about is Josh Pate. This is just something that bothers me, and I've never got to put my take out into the ether about this. And Josh Pate says something which is unequivocally true. If you're unaware, Josh Pate is a sports commentator. He's one of the best in the business. He has a show that he does for free on YouTube, I believe. He does it every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday year-round, where he talks about whatever he talks about. Honestly, I don't really listen to him a whole lot during the off-season because there's not a lot to talk about. If I'm just being honest with you here, there's just not. But he also does game day, Saturday type of content with CBS as well. And occasionally he says this stuff about James Franklin and Penn State. And the main thing that he says is he doesn't understand how people think James Franklin is overrated. Because they then ask them, where is he rated? And it's like such a simple question, but it's also so unbelievably true. Almost nobody has James Franklin inside the top 10 coaches in college football before this season, I think. I don't think anybody had him in that conversation. So when you're saying Penn State is overrated and James Franklin is overrated, where is he rated? Just ask them that question. And then they'll say, oh, well, you want to push him down to like outside of the top, 15, top 20? No, you're crazy. He's done a very, very good job at Penn State. Okay? And they've got a very talented team with two very, very good coordinators as well. So that could be a team to beat coming into this next year. Okay, but what about last year? What's the grade I give you for last year? The answer to that is I am going to go with a little bit more pessimistic grade. I'm going to give you an A minus. Okay, I don't think getting a lucky draw in the playoffs and lucking into a Big Ten championship game appearance is honestly all that impressive. I really don't. I'm sorry, it's just not. I just don't think it's all that impressive of a season. I really don't, especially because I don't think the team was very good. I think if you had managed to keep Manny Diaz around for another year, I think you probably win the national championships flat out, straight up. And I think you're probably the best team in college football by a significant margin. Okay? But I don't know if next season is going to be as wide open as it was this past season, where there really was pretty much no differentiating factors in terms of talent and coaching between the top 8 teams and, from team number 8 and from team number 1, I should say. There really wasn't a whole lot of difference there. And I believe firmly that Penn State is going to be a team to worry about next year, okay? But I'm not sure that they're a team that are going to be able to overcome their flaws. And they weren't this past season. So the grade is an A minus. It's still a tremendous season. It's absolutely a fantastic season. You can't take that away from you. I'm just a little bit lower on this season because I think luck had a lot more to do with it than perhaps a lot of Penn State fans are willing to admit. Now, looking forward for this football team here, 2025 might be the year. Pretty much everyone of importance is back except Abdul Carter. Okay, and then maybe there was, a couple of pieces in the secondary, but you've been pumping out a couple of pieces in the secondary into the NFL for a decade, okay? And you've been kind of doing that with edge rushers / linebackers as well. So I think there's a pretty real possibility that you're going to take a massive jump defensively. And hell, maybe you could take a massive jump offensively in year 2 of this system here. And maybe Drew Allar can finally take that leap to being more than just an uber talented football player and actually be good at football, which is not something that he was this past season. However, both running backs come back. You did lose some pieces on the offensive line, I believe. Obviously, you lost Tyler Warren, who was a dominant force at tight end. Probably not going to be able to replace him. You're going to have to figure out a way to get somebody in the passing game to step up, which is, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? But your schedule is another thing here because it's more difficult than it has been in the past few seasons, in my opinion. You start off with 3 cupcakes, Nevada, FIU, Villanova, 3-0. You then bring Oregon to Happy Valley, okay? That's the litmus test. You have the litmus test in the 4th week of the season. If you win that game, oh boy, baby, this is national championship or bust. That's what this season is. If you lose that game, you do have opportunities against quality opponents and teams that I think are going to be good, potentially even ranked when you play them, to earn your way into the playoffs, and then who knows what happens from there on, okay? I don't know enough about both of these teams. I know they're going to be really, really good. I do. I know Oregon's going to be good. I know they're going to be able to put up points. I don't know how much of a year one leap you're going to have under Jim Knowles on the defensive side. And I don't think in a shootout, I just don't trust Drew Allar or honestly the play calling to be able to outshoot, so to speak, Oregon. You then go on the road to UCLA after potentially a very tough, potentially if you win, emotional victory against Oregon. That game scares me because UCLA is going to do everything right. UCLA really strikes me as the kind of team that is not going to beat themselves. And if you lose that game, it could also be draining. So that game is a game with upset alert, not written all over it, but it's in the margins. It's there. You kind of got to notice it. Home versus Northwestern should be a W. On the road against Iowa, we don't know what Iowa's going to look like. I would lean towards a Penn State W right now. But that on the road could be another L. On the road to Ohio State, auto L. You never beat Ohio State. You always lose to Ohio State. That's a loss. Home against Indiana is another tough one because I do think Indiana is going to be a quality football team. However, I also think you're still probably going to be better than Indiana. I think Michigan State is a team that could improve dramatically from year one to year two. However, I think you're still probably better than them. Same thing with Nebraska. I think Nebraska would actually be from year 2 to year 3 with Matt Rule. But I think Nebraska is a big-time candidate for being able to take the leap forward as well. However, right now, I would still lean towards you. I would also lean towards you against Rutgers, even though I think Rutgers is going to be solid. So I think 10-2 is a reasonable expectation next year. But that's just me, and what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. To this point, I'd like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagree with me at any point, or you just have something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. And now, with the outro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.